Have you ever felt that knot in your stomach when you're in debt? That constant low-level hum of stress? Well, what if I told you that exact feeling can actually trick you into making decisions that push you even deeper into debt? Today, we're going to dig into the hidden psychology that creates this destructive debt spiral. And the roots of it? Well, they're pretty surprising. They go all the way back to a clash between America's own founding fathers.
All right, let's start with a scenario. This comes from a really fascinating study by the Ivy Business School. So picture this. You're out to dinner with a group of friends, maybe some coworkers. You've been trying to be careful with your money. Maybe you're dealing with some debt, so you order a simple salad and a water. But everyone else? Oh, they go all out. Appetizers, fancy entrees, a couple rounds of drinks, you know the drill. The vibe is great, everything's fun, but then the bill arrives. And someone says those words you've been dreading. Hey, let's just make it easy and split it evenly. And your heart just sinks.
You do that quick, panicked math in your head. Your meal was $20, but your quote-unquote equal share is $50. That's a $30 tax for just trying to be responsible. So what do you do? I mean, speaking up saves you real money, but it also feels like you're outing yourself, right? It just opens the door for people to judge you, that maybe you're broke, or you're being cheap, or that you're in some kind of financial trouble.
And that moment right there gets to the absolute core of what this study found. The researchers discovered a direct link. The more a person fears being judged for their financial situation, the more likely they are to just smile, nod, and overpay. You'd literally rather lose money than risk losing face. It's a completely self-defeating choice, and it's driven by this incredibly powerful psychological force.
And that force, it actually has a name. It's called anticipated stigma. Now, this isn't just about feeling a little awkward or embarrassed. No, this is a deep, profound fear of being devalued by your own social circle, of being seen as less than just because they know your financial reality. It's the fear of social rejection, and believe me, it is powerful enough to make us act completely against our own best interests.
So that begs the question, right? Why? Why does debt carry such an immense weight in our culture? Where does all this deep-seated shame actually come from? Well, to understand our modern anxiety, we have to rewind the clock, way back to the very founding of the nation.
It turns out America was basically born with two completely opposite ideas about debt living side by side. It's like we have these two competing financial DNAs, and they were embodied by two legendary figures. This clash created a cultural conflict that we are still trying to figure out in our own lives right now.
Okay, so on one side, you have the Puritan ethos. Think John Adams. This view, coming out of New England, saw saving money as a virtue, something almost holy. Hard work was how you served God, and in that world, debt wasn't just a financial oops, it was a moral failing, a sign of a weak character. The only way to be truly free was through disciplined saving. And then, on the complete other side, you have the tobacco culture of the Virginia planters, like Thomas Jefferson. Here, appearances were everything. Spending big wasn't a sin, it was how you showed everyone your status. Debt was just a tool you used to finance that lifestyle.
And I mean, just listen to how intense the Puritan view was. This is a quote from a letter John Adams wrote to his wife Abigail. He says, "Frugality, my dear, frugality must be our refuge." He doesn't just say it's a good idea. He calls it a refuge, like it's a fortress protecting them from moral and financial chaos. It was part of their identity.
Now flip that coin completely over. Jefferson himself described the trap his whole class was in. To keep up their lavish lifestyles, they got incredibly deep in debt to British merchants. He even said they were like a species of property that was owned by their creditors in London. Their debts were passed down from father to son, a whole cycle of dependency, all just to keep up appearances.
So this huge conflict, is debt a sin or is it a status symbol? It never actually got solved. It just got woven into the very fabric of American culture. We inherited both of these battling mindsets, and it's left us with this really conflicted, almost schizophrenic relationship with money.
So how does that historical battle play out in our lives today? Well, that deep shame that Adams and the Puritans talked about, it now fuels a destructive psychological pattern that researchers call the stigma spiral.
Here's how it works. Step 1, you're feeling financial stress because of your debt. Okay, step 2, that historical shame kicks in, and you start anticipating the stigma, the judgment you'll get if anyone finds out. Step 3, to avoid that judgment, you start to actively hide your debt. And then step 4, and this is the tragic irony, the things you do to hide it actually make your debt and your mental health even worse.
So what does this concealment actually look like? Well, it can be social spending, like splitting that dinner bill even when you really can't afford it just to fit in. It can be debt secrecy,
actively hiding your financial reality from your partner or your closest friends. And maybe the most destructive one of all is help avoidance. You don't ask for support from anyone, professional or personal, at the exact moment you need it the most.
And look, we're not talking about some kind of extreme, out-there situation here. The average consumer debt for the people in this study, and that's not including their mortgages, was around $25,000 to $26,000. This is a reality for millions of us.
But this next number? This is the one that's truly shocking. Because of that stigma-driven need to hide, the average person in the study waited over 5.5 years from the time they knew they had a serious problem to the time they first reached out for help. Just let that sink in. Over 5 years of struggling completely alone in silence.
And this creates this incredibly painful paradox. On one hand, the financial stress is screaming at you, get help, do something. But on the other hand, that anticipated stigma, that deep cultural shame is screaming just as loud, hide, stay quiet, pretend everything is fine. And the two forces just paralyze you, leaving you trapped.
So if shame and isolation are the engine of this spiral, what's the solution? How do you break out? Well, the researchers didn't just diagnose the problem, they actually tested a powerful way to break it. And the antidote, it turns out, is beautifully, unexpectedly simple. They ran a field experiment with real people who had already signed up for a debt education course. They wanted to see if the way you deliver the information could make a real difference in overcoming that feeling of stigma. So they created two groups. The first group took a private course. They got all the same info from the same instructors, but it was all through an anonymous webinar, no interaction with anyone else. The second group took the community course. They got the exact same content from the exact same people, but they were in a classroom together, in person, sharing the experience with their peers.
And the result? It was remarkable. The community-based course was way more effective. It improved people's well-being, it changed their financial behaviors, it even led to more actual debt repayment. And here's the kicker. It worked best for the people who started out fearing stigma the most. For the people carrying the most shame, just being in a room with others going through the same thing was totally transformative. The takeaway here couldn't be clearer. The antidote to the isolating poison of shame is the healing power of connection. The moment people realized they weren't alone, that their struggle wasn't some unique moral failing, that stigma just lost its power. Sharing the burden made it lighter for everyone. Which leaves us with one last thought to chew on. We're always told the path out of debt starts with a spreadsheet, a budget. But what if that's actually step 2? What if the real first step to financial freedom isn't a number at all, but a conversation?